Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Nonbinary, Memoirs of Gender and Identity. Edited by Micah Rajunov and Scott Duane. Narrated by Sarah Beth Pfeifer. Publisher's note. In this audio edition, you may hear references to visual elements present in the print and e-book formats of the book. Forward. From genderqueer to non-binary to Ricky Wilchins. Back in the 1990s, I started using the term genderqueer in an effort to glue together two nouns which seemed to me to describe an excluded middle. Those of us who were not just trans, but also queer. The kind of gender trash that transgressed the natural boundaries of transgender, those whom society couldn't digest. A prominent gay columnist promptly attacked me for ruining a perfectly good word like queer. Then, Joan Nessel, Claire Howell, and I used the word for the title of our anthology of emerging young writers, and there it sat. I don't recall anyone actually picking it up or using it. 8 years later, at Creating Change, an LGBTQ leadership conference, I saw a sticker someone has posted that read, "A genderqueer was here." I thought, well, that's interesting. Someone is actually using it. And so it begins. Fast forward about 10 years, and I was reading Matt Bernstein's anthology, Nobody Passes. In it, writer Rocco Bulldagger bemoans the term's very existence, declaring, "I am sick to death of hearing it." Such is the arc of new ideas. I suspect the same thing is about to happen with non-binary. For the public, that arc probably began in a town hall in London when a 20-year-old student came out to President Obama as non-binary. "I'm about to do something terrifying, which is I'm coming out to you as a non-binary person. In the UK, we don't recognize non-binary people under the Equality Act, so we literally have no rights," Maria Munir said. Obama, one of our most hip and cosmopolitan presidents ever, still had no idea what Munir was talking about. Befuddled, if well-intentioned, he relapsed into his LGBTQ talking points, which really had very little to do with it. He is not alone in his confusion. As non-binary comes to the fore, it will challenge everything we currently think about bodies, sexual orientation, and gender, almost all of which depends implicitly or explicitly on the binary. One can only hope almost none of it survives. If I am non-binary, can feminism, the politics of women, still represent me? Can I enter women-only spaces or men-only meetings? Can I be gay, straight, or bisexual? Here, language fails. The entire discourse on gayness and sexual orientation collapses. The same thing is going to happen with transgender. The trans in transsexual was always about moving from one thing to another. A person was going from male to female, or vice versa. This conception was more or less grafted onto the newer term, transgender. It's an overused truism that transgender was intended as a broad umbrella term for all those who are gender nonconforming, yet there are limits. Transgender itself is interpreted by some in terms of two binary genders that one is traveling between or else not conforming to. For others, especially transsexuals, being transgender implies a sense of conflict between one's inner gender identity and birth sex as male or female. In this way, transgender often unintentionally reinforced and reified the same binary of sexes and genders that makes outcasts of trans people in the first place. But what if one is not traveling anywhere? Or is entirely off the map of intelligible binary genders? familiar transgender concerns get scrambled quickly. For instance, we now accept that transgender women are women and can use the women's bathroom, but what bathroom do we want non-binary people to have the right to use? Both? Neither? And what sex marker do we want them to be able to put on their ID? Both? Neither? A new one? You can see where this is going. Neither our language nor our politics is suited to accommodate this, and we're going to have to do a lot of rethinking, all of which is long overdue. Binary gender regimes maintained themselves with a few rules. Everyone must be in a box. There are only 2 boxes. No one can change boxes. No one is allowed between the boxes. Since no one really fits the perfect masculine or feminine ideals, these rules end up being terribly oppressive to almost everyone, and more so to those who are genderqueer. One can only hope the emergence of a non-binary movement is the first step in finally retiring it. Munir was actually way ahead of a curve that is only now coming into view. It's not that non-binary people have no rights, although they don't, and they must. It's that, like Obama, most people have no idea that they exist or what they are. What comes next, what takes its place, is going to be very interesting. It will be years before even something as simple as the use of the pronouns they, them, and their works its way through our language and our brain pans and becomes standard. It will be even longer before people like Munir feel emboldened, coming out and stepping off the binary become widespread and commonplace. And that deeper social change that really opens a profound and enduring space for those who are non-binary to live fully with rights, dignity, and understanding will take even longer. Fortunately, until then, we will have this excellent new anthology to guide us. Introduction: Micah Rajunov and Scott Duane. Gender is a slippery illusion. Like the flat outline of a cube, you can perceive its shape as either concave or convex, extruding or withdrawn. If you're especially adept, you can see both simultaneously, or perhaps, even for a moment, neither at all. Upon deeper inspection, you might deduce the truth at the heart of it all. There is no one correct form, yet all of them are real. Most of us were raised to believe that gender is a dichotomy, male and female. But underneath this foundational fact lies a complexity we've been trying to untangle. The modern discourse on transgender people and on gender more broadly has already been elevated beyond duality. But what is gender? Rather than having an answer for this basic question, we are left with even more questions. What is a man? What is a woman? And, central to the essays contained within this book, why does this matter? Communities are blossoming around the experience of being something other than man or woman. While still new to many, the rise of non-binary identities is another step built upon the work and accelerating progress of our LGBTQ predecessors. As gender diversity is increasingly embraced, more people and their allies are emerging and finding one another. They, in turn, extend the fight toward a deeper understanding and acceptance not only of the complexity of gender, but of the complexity of the individual. This anthology faces the foundational questions of gender head-on. Through a personal examination of their own lives, 30 authors grant us a glimpse into the process of discovering, defining, constructing, creating, and experiencing gender in a unique way. Today, the world is finally ready to hear their stories. Part 1. What is gender? Is it a boy or a girl? It's a dog. But is it a boy dog or a girl dog? People are never shy to ask about a dog's gender and are quick to apologize when they get it wrong. Yet when it comes to the human species, directly inquiring about a person's gender is often considered egregiously offensive. Regarded almost as insulting is the act of accidental misgendering, like calling someone sir when it should be ma'am. In this situation, a casual apology is not the norm. Instead, the guilty party usually fumbles through a fix, thoroughly embarrassed by this transgression. As far as we know, dogs do not have a gender identity. They don't mind being called he or she as long as there's a treat involved. The question of boy dog or girl dog is merely an articulation of the most familiar and fundamental schema of gender: genitals. Humans, on the other hand, have a gender, an internal sense of who we are at our core that transcends body parts. Across cultures and millennia, people have blurred the bounds of gender. Although embodied in different words, meanings, and belief systems, their experience was as real then as it is today. In contemporary Western society, only in the last few decades has the realization that gender is not a simple male-female dichotomy come to the fore. But traditions die hard, and cultural inertia runs deep. Before a child can form complete sentences, they learn that gender is a, if not the, primary characteristic that defines a human being. Personhood is contingent on the immediate categorization into a sex. Once the doctor takes a cursory look at a newly born infant's genitals, officially proclaiming it to be male or female, the baby is marked for life. Yet even this simple act of examining external reproductive organs leads to gray areas. While in most babies, sex is as straightforward as penis or vagina, in as many as 1.7% of births, this is not the case. Medical literature possibly underestimates incidence rates, given that many people do not find out they are intersex or have a difference in sexual development, DSD, until adulthood. This happens either because only non-visible features such as their internal organs or chromosomes exhibit this divergence, or because their parents were pressured into silence due to continued stigmatization. If you argue that biological variations in sexual dimorphism are too rare to be of much importance, then consider that roughly 1 in 100 people have bodies that differ from the standard male or female, a rate that mirrors that of people with red hair. Surely you know someone with red hair. Biological diversity is only the first crack in the precarious male-female binary. Historically, societies have afforded gender expression varying degrees of flexibility that shift across time. An example from our own modern culture? Up until the 1940s, pink was considered a masculine color for its proximity to the more vigorous red. But due to a combination of gender-normative panic and marketing, pink is now exclusively reserved for the feminine. Another strikingly recent gender crossover is the mundanity with which we regard women who wear pants. Clearly, the porous boundary around gender expression is not new. Rather, what has permeated our contemporary awareness is the acknowledgement that gender runs deeper than appearance, behavior, or preferences. Gender, is gradually being understood to be a holistic experience of ourselves, inside and out. Gender identity is regarded as separate from our biology, genitals, reproductive organs, chromosomes, hormones, secondary sex characteristics. It is also distinct from our gender expression, hair length, clothing, mannerisms, makeup. For most folks, their biology, expression, and identity are all in alignment. But for an estimated 1.4 million Americans, there is a mismatch. Framing gender identity as self-determined and independent from our body and external presentation has allowed increased recognition and acceptance of transgender people. Despite this promising reconceptualization, our grasp of gender hinges upon the words we use to describe it. Language, unfortunately, remains steeped in binary constructions. Try describing your gender without using the terms male-female, masculine-feminine, girl-boy, woman-man, or any variation thereof. You are likely to come up blank. Similarly, it's nearly impossible to talk about someone else without assigning a gender to them. In many cases, you cannot escape gendering even yourself. For instance, in Romance languages like Spanish or French, nouns and adjectives indicate gender, which can often be your own. In English, the paltry offering of two gendered pronouns poses limitations to properly address non-binary people. Just as we don't say she when referring to a man, using either he or she is incorrect when referring to someone who is not male or female. One way of working around these constraints is by repurposing existing solutions. Because our language has been using singular they for centuries, this has become the most common pronoun for referencing to anyone whose gender is not known, not specified, or not in the male-female binary. As of 2017, the official style book for the Associated Press now recommends using the singular they-them for non-binary individuals. The trans community has further spurred the proliferation of new pronouns, s/he, pronounced he or she, z here, they them, am. The list is innumerable, with comprehensive guides, apps, and games to help illustrate their usage. Best practices include specifying pronouns in email signatures and business cards, mentioning a person's pronoun alongside their name when introducing them, and always asking for someone's pronoun. Words shape our world, and finding the right ones, or inventing new ones, gives us the power to expand what we already know. More importantly, words grant us the ability to communicate with others. At the same time, words can box us in, labeling everyone and everything, inevitably homogenizing differences. As liberating as it can be to find a word that describes your gender, it can also be limiting. Labels place boundaries on what we are, as well as what we are not. Non-binary simply means not binary. When applied to gender, it means not exclusively male or female. Non-binary is defined by what it's not. Even the word genderqueer, derived from a reclaiming of the word queer, encompasses any form of gender that is not normative. The problem of terminology goes beyond one of social cohesion and agreement. It is philosophical. How can a group of people whose genders are largely illegible to the world translate their existence to the men and women around them? Often, the language of the non-binary community reflects the frustrating but necessary process of defining oneself only in opposition to what is already defined. demi-boy, transfeminine, androgynous, bigender, even the word non-binary itself. All of these incorporate the existing binary to one extent or another. Gender nonconforming, gender variant, gender diverse, gender expansive, gender creative. Many of the terms are quite new, and as such, haven't settled firmly into the lexicon. What all of them fail to capture is the nuanced humanity of those whose gender ventures into the unknown. Non-binary individuals are more than simply both, neither, or in between. Stepping beyond male and female leads us into the infinite universe of gender. In this book, non-binary people finally get a chance to define themselves by who they are, rather than by the negative space of what is missing. The narratives in the first part highlight how those whose gender cannot be described as simply male or female are creating a positive space for their existence. Part 2. Visibility. Standing up and standing out. Shared identities serve as an imperfect proxy to quickly ascertain and understand another's experience. In addition to gender, we are born into, create, adopt, and self-proclaim ourselves into further categories based on race, religion, nationality, sexuality, profession, socioeconomic status, disability. We are trauma survivors, cancer patients, Californians, parents, veterans, vegetarians, artists, athletes, and more. Not only is gender highly unique and individualized, so is the intersection of all our other identities. We all carry visible and invisible identities. Like gender, some of our identities are immediately evident to strangers, while others are misinterpreted, misconstrued, or hidden. Some identities elicit pride, others shame. Most of them are accompanied by an inherited or chosen community of others with similar stories, uniting us through common characteristics or experiences. The solidarity that arises affords support, but also demarcates us from them. When it's unclear whether someone is an us or a them, outsiders tend to react unpredictably, with confusion, curiosity, desire, ridicule, anger, or even violence. Being openly transgender still invites danger. Trans people are 7 times more likely than the cisgender population to experience physical violence from law enforcement. Trans women are almost twice as likely to experience sexual violence compared to other survivors. Perhaps most worrisome, 2/3 of the victims of hate-motivated homicides are trans women of color. Aside from hate crimes and harassment, trans people face alarmingly high rates of poverty, unemployment, homelessness, and HIV, with scarce legal protections. Consequently, many trans people, especially those who pass or are consistently perceived as cisgender men or women, avoid disclosing that they are transgender in the majority of their social and professional spheres. Opting out of being out was the norm in the past. Transition was accompanied by the presumption that one would go stealth and never reveal a transsexual history for fear of being ostracized, fired, arrested, or worse. Our understanding of disclosure has since evolved to encompass, like everything else, a spectrum. Reasons for disclosing are as varied as people. Some feel safe sharing their trans identity to a select few, others unabashedly announce it to the world. Even what someone discloses and how vary by individual and circumstance. But choice in disclosure assumes not only safety, it is also contingent on the ability to be consistently perceived as one of the 2 readily available genders. So what does passing mean for non-binary people? In the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey, only 3% of non-binary respondents always told others that they were non-binary. When it is impossible for your external appearance to accurately reflect your inner gender, when the general public is missing the mental model that represents your gender, you will never be truly seen. Visibility of transgender people has gained significant traction in the last decade. In 2014, Time magazine declared a transgender tipping point when Laverne Cox graced the cover. Celebrities like Jazz Jennings, Janet Mock, Chaz Bono, and Caitlyn Jenner have taken over reality TV, along with portrayals of trans characters in numerous movies, books, TV programs, and other media. However, the overwhelming majority of these depictions reinforce the prototypical transgender narrative centered on milestones related to transition from one binary gender to the other. While this template can serve as a helpful guide, it can severely limit the possibilities for anyone whose gender path does not align with it. Non-binary experiences remain invisible to this momentum. Mainstream portrayals of non-binary people are scarce. In a 10-year content analysis of 13 of the most widely circulated U.S. newspapers, only 1.2% of paragraphs that mentioned a transgender person were about a non-binary individual. Only a handful of global or national public figures have alluded, even tangentially, to identifying with gender in a non-traditional way. In becoming one of the few non-binary role models with far-reaching platforms, they are burdened with the unrealistic expectation of speaking for the entire genderqueer umbrella. Even when stories of non-binary people are published, popular media tends to erase the broad range of diversity in gender communities. Left behind in the shadows are those who are non-white, assigned male, middle-aged or older, femme, disabled, medically transitioned, parents, religious, live in a rural area, or are part of countless other overlooked groups. How can people understand what they don't even know exists? When a non-binary person opens up their life to one or hundreds or millions, they contribute to rebuilding our shared mental model of gender. By speaking out and sharing their stories, each author in Part 2 cultivates a new branch of gender, encouraging it to sprout and grow freely within the minds of outsiders and the spirits of their own. Part 3. Community. Creating a place for the rest of us. We are presently witnessing an exponential rise in scientific, legal, political, educational, theoretical, and lexical advances that support the needs of gender-diverse people. As transgender topics take center stage in media and in politics, so do public arguments over their rights. Dinner table debates over bathroom bills parallel the waning furor over gay marriage in the United States. Through that milestone, gay and queer people gained more than the right to a legal union. Society's understanding of sexuality shifted from merely being about sexual acts to encompassing a complex amalgamation of romantic love, companionship, and familial structure. Similarly, gender discourse is gradually moving from penises and vaginas and their corresponding surgeries to a conceptualization of identity that reckons with transgender people as full participants in life and society. Although widely celebrated, the consequent integration into pre-existing social structures has nevertheless entailed conflict within the trans and queer population. assimilation into the mainstream forces some to reconcile with.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?